Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Welcome to Projections, our weekly show about virtual reality and augmented reality. We've been living with the headsets, the VR headsets, for over a year now.
Yeah, the PC headsets, they have something in common, and that's a cable.
Yeah, they're all tethered. And it was earlier this year, almost a year ago in fact, that I got to go hands-on with a product called TPCast from a company also called TPCast. And their promise was to make VR wireless,
and
using wireless transmission.
They did, and it was only available over in China for a while, right?
Yes.
Some people who are really into VR here, they managed to import them, but now it's officially available here.
Yeah, so we have our hands on the TPCast for the HTC Vive. There's actually two different models, one for the Vive and one shipping now for the Rift. And I want to share some of our thoughts and experiences using it. So it's on the headset right now. It's actually not just one device. It's a platform, a system of devices.
That's true. Yeah, so I guess this is the transmitter.
Receiver.
Oh, is that right?
That's right. It receives the signal.
So tell me how it works.
So, right. So I think the thing that you most notice is what goes on, what you wear. Right.
Yeah.
So typically for the Vive setup, you have a headset that you have three things that come out of it. You have power, HDMI, and USB.
Right.
Right. So the long cable that typically connects to this junction box, right? Three cords: power, USB, HDMI.
Right.
And so you need to find a way to feed all those things into the headset wirelessly, or at least without being connected to a power adapter or a computer. So HDMI comes in through this box, and this is a receiver that gets then wirelessly tethered to this transmitter. And then there's USB and power. There's USB that also comes in through here and goes to the headset. But you'll notice at the back of the receiver, there's also now this cord. So it's not completely tetherless. You are tethered to something.
But you wear this around your waist.
This.
So is this the transmitter for the USB?
That is the transmitter getting output from your controls. Yes, you're right.
Okay.
So this is power in and data out.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So you actually you're both transmitting and you're receiving.
And
you're
this
receiving video.
And this is your big fat battery that you can have down here.
And I was surprised because that big fat battery, it says Anker on it. It's just an off-the-shelf, very high density, high capacity USB power pack.
Can I pull this out?
If you pull it out, you'll notice one interesting thing about it. You can absolutely do it.
It is just a USB battery pack.
And it's two USBs.
Right, it uses both USB jacks.
Yeah.
So you absolutely need this USB battery pack.
It's designed for this USB power pack. You can't get one that's smaller with this output. They're about like $30, $40 on Amazon, but it comes with one, and you plug it in, and like you said before, you're both transmitting and receiving. This then is a transmitter that sends a signal back out, which is your motion controls, like the tracking data from your head and the wireless tracking data from your Vive wands.
But that doesn't go to this.
No, this is a video transmission only. There's no receiver here. That goes to this, a TPCast router.
It's a standard Wi-Fi router?
It is technically a standard Wi-Fi router, but comes pre-configured out of the box for the system. So you can't use your own router for the system.
Could you replace your router with that one?
You could absolutely replace your router with that one, or most PCs have two Ethernet jacks on there, or you can use your Wi-Fi for internet on your laptop, and then if you have an Ethernet port or USB to Ethernet, you could plug that in.
Okay, so it's standard, has four outputs, four Ethernet jacks.
Yep.
Okay.
So the setup for the Vive, it's already a little bit, it's more than the Oculus or Windows Mixed Reality. With this, you're adding another power jack outlet, right? Because you need to plug in the router as well as something to charge, which is your battery pack.
And how long would you say this lasts using TPCast?
They say 5 hours. I would say over 4 hours.
Okay.
4 hours, which is a long time.
Sure.
And it's hot swappable, so you can disconnect it if you run out of power, and if you have another one already charged up, plug it in.
Is this a standard battery pack available on Amazon?
30 to 40 bucks.
Okay, so that's really relatively inexpensive.
Relatively inexpensive. And when you get it all set up, there's a little bit of software. You download a client that makes sure all the connections are right. And when it works, it really works.
I got to try it for the first time today, and played Space Pirate Trainer, and I felt immediately like it was an advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, almost like an unfair advantage
Right.
if I'm playing this game competitively, because I am now moving and twisting and bobbing in a way that I was able to play without a shield far longer than I otherwise would have.
And it's not just because we're using room scale versus standing or 360, right? Technically, the play spaces I've been using this are exactly the same amount of area that I have at home.
Right.
But it really is not having that cable. I know cable sense is a thing, and we've been accustomed to having the sense of where this cable gets, drags against our feet or how it gets intertwined.
That's the thing, like how many times you twisted one direction so that
Yes.
you can untwist the other direction.
Yeah, when you're using this, when I was using it, I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what direction I was pointing.
Right. Like the great thing about VR, you can get lost in it. You don't know where you are physically,
Yeah.
but to not know where you are spinning-wise, that's sort of a new thing that this allows you to reach that kind of level of in-depth.
So the liberation is a real thing. And, we've had liberated untethered VR by putting a backpack on our backs, right? So it really is also about performance. Did you notice any latency?
No, in fact, you told me to cover up the receiver and see if I noticed any kind of change in anything, and I didn't. You said that you could.
You can.
But no, when it's working, it's working. It
perfect.
feels like a wired connection,
Yeah.
which that surprises me because it's a lot going on.
It is.
That is a high definition video signal, and then you have all of the controls, and you're using multiple peripherals to make that happen. And I didn't notice any delay at all.
I found no latency. I did see what looks like lower bit rate compression when this is occluded. And so the important thing to get this working is not only solid connections, but placement of this transmitter.
Right.
They recommended placing it close to where your Vive, your beacons are, your lighthouse beacons. But I just put it at the top of my room, and as long as this was in field of view of this, within even up to like 20 feet, it worked just fine.
This is a 50 gigahertz signal.
Yeah.
So your Wi-Fi routers, you have your 2.4 gigahertz, your 5 gigahertz. The 5 tends to work, it's faster, but in closer proximity, and it doesn't go through walls as well.
That's usually the trade-off, right?
Now you're thinking 50 gigahertz. That's even more so. So you're not going through walls with this signal, and it does want line of sight, and it wants close proximity. But these are all things that lend themselves to VR.
Absolutely. And my fear was that, increased bandwidth, more susceptibility to occlusion, but you and I both tested it by putting our hands over it. The signal wasn't just on, off, on, off. It didn't even break up like an analog signal. Most times, it didn't even break up. Like you can't put a hat over this, of course, but I found very rarely did I lose signal, or even that the signal was noticeably degraded using this system. Now, that's not to say it's perfect, right? There have been many people with various experiences. I think because there's so many parts to it, people have experiences like high pitches. Some people have had latency problems. And on one of my home systems, it just stopped working. The receiver and transmitter just wouldn't see each other. So
why would that have anything
inconsistent.
to do with the system that it's connected to?
I'm not sure that the pairing gets misaligned. People have already open source in GitHub their own version of the client that that runs the diagnostics. I don't think it's not a very polished system. I mean, the fact that this is a off-the-shelf router, this is an off-the-shelf
USB.
battery that they're using to get the signals back and forth, the fact that you don't get everything. Your mic signal doesn't go through. And also the camera at the front of the Vive that gives you that enhanced chaperone system doesn't work. They don't have the bandwidth to send that camera system over the Wi-Fi, or at least it's not built into their protocol.
Yeah, it's not a super elegant solution to this. It's not what you would expect Oculus or Vive to do once they get to a wireless solution. But it's happening. Like this wireless VR using PCs is now possible. A year ago, we were hearing that this was something that we hoped to get one day.
Right.
And we've already got it.
It feels like a proof of concept that they worked out some of the bugs and they put it on shelves and you can order and buy it.
Right.
It does not feel like a polished experience or an integrated experience.
Right.
For that. I mean, the belt, this battery and this transmitter system, I like that this plugs in and this is contained, right? And then the belt they give you is this, and you're supposed to wrap this around your waist, plug it in, and kind of have that battery hanging off. Now, I see a lot of people maybe being inventive, like if they're playing a military shooter like Onward, and maybe they can design more of a vest that they can strap the battery to make it look like a magazine for one of their guns. then that's going to be a little more immersive. But right now, this is still flopping around, and sometimes I even put it in my like hoodie pocket, and it works. But the battery is noticeable, I would say.
I didn't mind the battery at all. In fact, I forgot entirely about it. What bothered me was the cable that goes to the battery, and I think that's just a matter of finding placement. You were suggesting going straight back.
Over your head, yeah.
I was a little over the shoulder with it.
You don't want it to graze you.
Right, exactly, especially when you're moving your arms around. I didn't find this to be an obstruction at all. I thought it was a huge improvement. I think it's interesting that we can now have, that there are improvements third parties are making to these headsets that are so substantial. It's like you just don't see this in standard PC gaming anymore, you know, where you have maybe a graphics card that's slightly more powerful and you can get some more anti-aliasing or higher resolution graphics. This is substantially different. This changes your experience of VR.
Specifically for the type of games that are going to benefit from it, the room scale games, right?
Sure.
Things full 360, things that are going to want you to spin around. You know, if you're playing a shooter where you're shooting from things behind rack and you don't want to have to unwind the same way you turn, this is going to help tremendously, but not like a cockpit game isn't going to benefit tremendously
or a driving game
from this, or a driving game. So, you know, it's choosing it based on your needs. And I think if you look at the Discord, if you look at the forums for TPCast, some people are spending more time troubleshooting than actually playing it. In my case, from one of my machines I was using this on, I still can't get it to work. The other machine, this laptop, works perfectly. So it's an inconsistent experience at not an exactly cheap price.
That's the big problem with it.
It's $300.
That's as much as the headset is now.
At least on the Rift side. And the Rift is actually $350. And so another one of my slight disappointments is that it's two separate SKUs. Like theoretically, if this is just transmitting just the wireless HDMI, why can't it be the same SKU? And it's because of the power requirements. The power that comes out of the battery pack looks exactly the same, but the output here that goes into the Vive, what the Rift needs is going to be something slightly different. Yeah, so that's unfortunate. I wish it was one seamless package. I know a lot of people out there, if they're looking to invest in a $300 accessory to your VR system, maybe they already have two systems. It'd be nice to go back and forth. But once it was set up, I don't want to remove it. I want to keep this on. The battery life being at least 4 hours is sufficient enough that I feel like this is the only way I want to play wirelessly going forward.
Yeah, I could see some people wondering, well, maybe I shouldn't invest in this yet because maybe the next version of a VR headset from either Valve, HTC, or Oculus is around the corner. Even if that were the case, I don't think that anybody's going wireless for the near future, given how much it does cost to do.
Right, but that still doesn't future-proof this, because if the next generation of headsets is a higher resolution or uses a different HDMI spec,
oh no,
if it
this
uses
won't
2.1, then this won't work. It won't have the bandwidth.
I wonder what the max bandwidth is for this 50 gigahertz signal, but certainly this version of that won't work.
Right. So it's really, I mean, we don't expect new headsets out, at least from Oculus in the next year.
Nope.
So if you're really looking to spend another $350 on something that can improve your experience and take the gamble of some of that troubleshooting, which hopefully improves over time, then you're going to get something different.
I do think for competitive games, it's an advantage, almost to the degree that it's unfair.
Wow.
If you're playing Echo Arena and you have one of these on, I just feel like you are so much more free to. You're going to actually need more. You're going to not only need your chaperone boundaries clearly configured, but maybe something at your feet so that you can sense when you're off of your area, a big mat or something. Because this allows you not just to spin around faster, but jump, swing your arms. You just feel more immersed in that space in a way that allows your body to be more free and nimble.
Untethered in all the ways. Yeah. So that's the TPCast system. It is available now. I think the Rift version is a little back ordered, but the Vive system, if you order it, I got it pretty quickly, like in a week or two, and we'll be hoping that they iterate on this in the future.
Well, we've had a lot of interesting big budget games come in, a spate of big budget games lately, especially for the Vive. And one that caught our attention is LA Noire, the VR case files. I think this is one of the better games that have come out, specifically on the Vive side, in quite some time, especially any kind of conversion from an older game. This is a good job. Yeah,
I didn't play the original, which was a 1940s-based noir detective game.
Came out about 6 years ago.
Right. So I was interested in why this was a game that they wanted to adapt in VR, and two, how it would take advantage of VR. And it's incredible. So you were playing a cop, right? And you go on cases. It's a non-linear story where you choose your cases. But unlike other Rockstar games, it's not like an open world Grand Theft Auto, right? You are on scenes, crime scenes, environments, and when you're there, you have a lot of freedom to kind of explore that world.
Right, and you can follow up on different clues in the case a little bit to some degree. It's not terribly linear. There is some choices to make about where do you want to go around town. There is a driving element to the game.
Yeah.
So and we kind of buried the lead saying it's a Rockstar game. I mean, that says a lot. Rockstar is a quality company, and this bodes well for, fingers crossed, any kind of game, Grand Theft Auto that we might see in VR in the future would be amazing. But this game, the driving element is really, I think, quite well done.
I like that it's also optional.
Right, exactly. I've never seen this done where there's two modes to the game, where there's a standing mode and a sitting mode, and they tell you when to transition. The screen goes black, on comes the sit down, and then when you are sat, you press a button and you're suddenly in some seated mode. Maybe it's driving, maybe you're interrogating, but it's interesting for them to approach VR and allow you to move around and have almost a room scale, and then also a seated mode.
Right, the standing mode, you're walking around. So it might be you're chasing someone, it might be you're walking into a gun store and asking someone some questions, or investigating a crime scene. Now, to walk around, a couple actual different locomotion mechanics. You can point at a target, it glows, it's a point of interest, and then you'd have a out-of-body third-person experience where your character, you see them walking to the next point. Or, something I really like is that you press the touchpad on your Vive controller and you swing your hands and you walk.
Right. Doesn't Onward do a similar thing?
Yeah, and then some people have used it in certain ways. People put trackers on their hips.
Right.
But I found that it was really comfortable because it's not high speed. I'm casually walking and exploring my environment, and it was surprisingly comfortable for this type of game.
There's two speeds. You can just swing your arms normally and you do a walk, but if you pull the trigger down, you go a little bit faster into a sprint. And the amount that you're swinging your hands controls how fast you're walking, and it is an interesting solution that reduces motion sickness. I don't have a problem with the motion sickness so much. I just found that movement mode was just took longer. And it was less accurate. So I would start going in the wrong direction and I would have trouble turning. I ended up just playing the whole game with the point and click.
Oh, interesting. I tried to reduce my turning when I was doing the hand swinging. It was more just long strides of walking down, stopping, turning.
Yeah.
Now, there are a lot of NPCs in this game, right? It's a single-player game. You have your boss, your partner, there are people on the street, like as in Rockstar games. And one of the more notable aspects of LA Noire was the facial animation for the characters. They did a lot of interesting facial performance capture that got mapped onto these NPCs. And that, I think, is the reason they made this game in VR.
I totally agree. Yeah, when it came out, I was super excited for this innovation. I felt like it was going to be adopted by every game afterwards. But of course, it didn't end up happening. But it's super cool because they actually had a camera on all of the actors who did the voice acting, and they had them look straight forward, and they recorded their performance, and then they mapped it onto a relatively low resolution geometry of their actual body, but the facial movie that plays on top of them brings it to life.
Totally. And walking up to a witness and asking them questions and having them perform, I was playing along. For me, it was almost like being in a play. I was nodding and folding my arms, and of course you interact with them by selecting off screen, like, do I want to be good cop, bad cop, or I pick up my notepad and I'm choosing options to ask them a question about this. It felt really interactive as a performance.
Yeah, they spun that technical innovation into a gameplay mechanic because you have to look at their delivery and decide whether or not you think they're telling the truth. So there's a lot of eye movement and they're trying to cover up secrets, and you have to watch them as the cop and decide, are they telling the truth or not?
Which takes great advantage of VR because I can get right up to them and scrutinize their facial expressions.
I enjoy that from a technical standpoint, just admiring the game engine. This, being in VR, allows you to get right up there and check out the movie, and you can see fades between the different movies, facial performances, and it's just interesting to analyze it from a game making standpoint too.
And of course, the game when it came out was very well reviewed. People loved the story, and all of that comes through in this. One of the things I didn't like though was that some of the interrogations environments, if you fail, you just got to repeat it over and over again. It becomes very choose your own adventure. It's got to pick the right response.
Right.
Like really, like I need to follow the script.
It felt very much like an adventure game.
Yeah.
This could be the rebirth of adventure games because I would totally be on board. This could be Police Quest for the 2000s. I mean, it is that way though. When you go down the wrong path, there's a lot of repetition. And in fact, I got into a spot where I was backed into a corner and I hadn't done enough investigation. So I could not get through this scene. There was no possible way because I didn't have the evidence. Unfortunately, the game wasn't smart enough to know that.
Yeah.
So I just kept replaying it until I went back into an earlier save
polish,
state.
I think, could be used. And also some of the problems of adapting a game like this to VR, where like if you walk into an apartment building, you have to go up flights of stairs. If I'm used to my walking mechanic, that doesn't work up the flights of stairs. You have to teleport. And there's also
the point and click.
The point and click, yeah. Then there's also combat. Too. Like there are modes, there are parts of the game where you're in a shootout with some bank robbers or
where you're cocking a shotgun two-handed and you're leaning around corners.
And I don't think that was as engaging, the action wasn't as engaging as or polished as other VR shooters we've played.
Right.
Although some of the hand-to-hand combat I actually really enjoyed.
There's more hand-to-hand combat than armed combat, but it's relatively simple. I enjoyed the hand-to-hand combat, but I wanted it to be a little deeper too. Like there's just a lot of blocking, punching.
Yeah.
Thankfully, you could just do an open-handed slap, which is probably how I would have a fight in real life. So I was glad that was there.
So LA Noire, I mean, it's piggybacking off of all the work that they did on this huge AAA console game.
Yeah.
So we can't expect that this is going to be a regular thing for VR in the future, but it was such a smart move for them to adapt this specific game, and I think it was, as a port, like you said, it's one of the shining examples of a port to VR.
Yeah, unfortunately, the team that made this game originally was dissolved. They didn't continue to make games with Team Bondi, but I hope that they're happy to see this game find a new life in VR. It really is one of the better choices that we've seen as a remake, and they made some super smart choices. Hopefully now we're looking forward to more Rockstar games coming to VR in the future.
Awesome. So that's it for this week. Next week will be our final episode of Projections of the Year. Hope you've enjoyed it for this year, and we'll be talking about some of our favorite VR experiences of 2017. So we'll see you then.